So you haven't made up for that yet. I just come down to take a look where I want to put Santa or all the reindeers and everything. And I had to come down and I saw something was going on and I had some presents. So I thought I'd bring them over. If y'all be good now, okay? This right here. First of all, let me say that December 2nd at 6 p.m. I'm going to be back. Fire department's going to bring me over to the lighting of the tree, the lighting of Main Street. So be sure and be there. Tell all your friends, come on over and do that. And I got a few presents. The next morning, the very next morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, fire department's going to bring me, I wonder if they're going to feed me over there overnight, I don't know. But anyway, we're going to come back the next morning, and we got breakfast with Santa. Not you. Okay? Wow. So I brought a few presents. Now I got to tell you, this is a bad year. Every year is a bad year this time. So much work to do. I'm so tired all the time. So I've got a few presents, but forgive me, I just don't have any ho-hos left in me, so I brought some so that I could share some ho-hos, because I know you don't get one. Because I know, and you don't get one. You get one. I know where to butter my bread. You get one, because I just don't have that energy.
Inflation got Santa too, huh?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I tell you. One more. Where is she? I'm missing the trustee.
She's homesick.
Oh, here. How come she's not answering? She's just looking at me.
She can't. There she is.
I'm going to leave these ho-ho here, and you have to figure that out. But, I know that you're all led by big cheese around here. And sometimes you just don't get recognized. So we wanted to fix that and get you a shirt. So everybody would know that you're the big cheese.
Thank you, Santa.
You're welcome.
Move along. Can't be a good bag, it's black.
I think there's something.
It's cold. Something's cold. There's gotta be some cold
Oh.
in there for you.
Here.
All right. That's better than last year. Thank you.
Give this to your kids, though.
Oh, yes.
That's not really.
You have the gluten-free kind?
No. So remember, folks, December 2nd, 6 o'clock, the lighting of the tree. We'll be singing, we'll be ho-ho-hoing. I'm going to leave an extra bag here, about it too. And then the next morning, 8 o'clock, over at the community house, breakfast with Santa. It's $10 adult, $5 for children under 10. And there's going to be lots of fun. There's going to be face painting. There's going to be balloon animals, singing, all kinds of good things from 8 to 12. Go to holidayinthegrove.org and get your tickets. I got to get back because old Rudolph's over there just panting and carrying on. So, Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Santa should have been nicer to Walter because now he's not getting a special event permit.
Just saying.
All right. Item 604. I'd like to call the November 15th Village Board meeting to order. Trustee Shomas, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We've got Santa back.
Take it on his way here.
We forgot his jingle bell.
Get to start up his reindeer.
We do have two trustees that are home sick, so I would ask the village board if there's any objections to Trustee Lindsay or Trustee Walter being remote this evening.
No objection. No objection.
Thank you. Hearing none. Now, Allison, can you do roll call, please?
Trustee Bonnie?
Here.
Trustee Heron?
Here.
Trustee Shomas?
Here.
Trustee White?
Oh, here.
Trustee Lenny? Trustee Wall?
Here.
Brett?
Tonight is the public hearing. Our finance director, Matt, is away at training this week, but the short and sweet of it is the law requires a public hearing if the anticipated levy is more than 5% above last year's levy. The anticipated amount the village would receive at a full levy would be 5.47%, so that dictates the need for the public hearing. If you saw the public notice, it actually has a higher number in that, and that's because at the time the village has to pass the levy, we do not have the information from the county on what the new growth is. So the village to capture any new growth plugs in a number that's higher than what's anticipated, then the county reduces the actual levy once the new growth numbers are determined. And again, the finance director's estimate of what the actual would be 5.47%.
Thank you. I would like to open the public hearing at this time for the proposed tax levy process. Public hearing comments will be 3 minutes. And Allison, I believe you have a clock. So if there's any public hearing or any public comments at this time for the 2022 proposed tax levy, please step. Okay, I'm hearing none. Going once, going twice, 3 times. We will close that portion. Under appointments and presentations this evening, we have a presentation for the tax increment financing eligibility study. It is in your packet. It was online, and we do have Jared here who would like to go over with Marianne, would like to go over the results of this with the board. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Jared.
Hi, can everybody hear me all right?
We can.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight is the eligibility study that we had recently updated the prior study we had done, what we are calling the crown test, and if you have a copy in front of you, you can see the area we're talking about. And so as part of this study, we wanted to take a look at the area and see if it would likely qualify should the village choose to pursue essentially establishing tax increment financing for this area. And so as we see in the study, we looked at all the qualifying factors as it pertains to vacant land. And so all the factors from the statute are outlined here. And basically there's 2 criteria you can qualify vacant land under. There's a set where you would have to meet 2 factors in order to be eligible. And then there's a separate set of factors where if you meet one of the eligibility factors, the vacant property would be considered eligible for tax increment financing. So the one in particular we're going to be looking at this evening as part of this study is that the area prior to its designation is subject to chronic flooding, which adversely impacts on real property in the area as certified by a registered professional engineer or appropriate regulatory agency. And so as part of our study and evaluating what factors could potentially exist, there's actually an engineering report prepared by SimCom, which is attached to the study. And basically this study concludes that for their use of FEMA floodplain mapping, some soil data to the county, and ultimately their own survey, is that, if I can read here, the soil characteristics mapping verify overbank flooding and poor directional drainage at a frequency and duration sufficient to support jurisdictional wetland environments, and based on the documentation reviewed, is their opinion that it's reasonable to conclude that significant portions of the property that we're looking at here are subject to chronic flooding as it would pertain to the definitions of the TIF Act. And so kind of in summary there is that they performed an analysis of the boundary area. Like I said, they evaluated the FEMA floodplain that exists within the area and also the characteristics of the soil and the drainage characteristics therein. And they concluded that per the definitions of the TIF Act, it is their opinion that this area would meet that requirement for chronic flooding. And so really that's the basis of the eligibility study. Like I said, we evaluated all factors, and having that study prepared with the, having it prepared through the lens of what we were referring to is that ultimately we were able to rely on the engineering report that this area is impacted by chronic flooding as it is defined in the TIF Act. And so With that, I would ask if anybody has any questions about the study itself, or about TIP in general, or anything else that we'd be able to provide any clarity about.
Thanks, Jared. I'm going to start with the trustees, if there's any questions.
I just want to remind everyone, for the purposes of the meeting, if you're going to speak right into the mic like you're singing on a podcast, and then just give me a pause so I can or mute us and let Jared talk. So,
Jared, I know we don't have Matt here. He is typically the go-to on all things TIF, who's our finance director. So if you could give us kind of a recap as to what happens next with this, because I know the public is concerned that this is some sort of, there's finality with this, and there's not. So I just want you to clarify for everyone what the next steps will look like.
The next steps, especially as it pertains to the work that we do, this would be the completion of anything that we've been contracted to do. And the next steps really is that the village hasn't done anything as far as going down the road of establishing any sort of tax increment financing in the district. What this was just an analysis to give a reasonable idea whether or not the area might qualify before any procedure were to actually be undertaken. If the village was interested in pursuing tax increment financing for this area, it would trigger a whole schedule of events that would take somewhere between 4 to 6 months. And the beginning of that process is a notification to all the taxing districts about what the village is considering. And then there's a lengthy process that involves mailing to residents, property owners, public hearing. There's a joint review board with the taxing districts. And like I said, it's a lengthy process should the village actually want to pursue establishment of the tax increment financing district. But as far as what I've prepared for this evening's meeting, it's basically just an analysis to give the village an idea of, what are the conditions in this area, and ultimately, if the village is interested in pursuing tax increment financing, would the area likely qualify? So, like I said, the extent of what we've been hired to do is our work, and just the presentation of the study, given the village the summary of, like I said, the conditions that we noted that we feel would cause the area to qualify. So, if there was any decision to pursue TIF, it triggers a whole nother schedule and a process.
Okay, thank you. Heidi and Ryan, you're online. I don't know if you have any questions for Jared.
Yeah, I do have one quick question. This is Ryan. And I trust you can hear me?
Sure.
Okay. Yep. Jared, I was just curious. I know looking at the documents, looks like the chronic flooding areas obviously along the creek and obviously swells out from there. All that's wooded. It's a small portion of the overall acreage. At least in initial plans, weren't planned on developing that. It's going to leave it as is. So even taking that into consideration, that's something that doesn't get taken into consideration. It just is, it's an all or nothing. So maybe if 5% of the land of 800 acres, 5% was in a floodplain or could be chronic flooding, it qualifies all of it.
Basically, the engineering report documents the amount of the land, I think it's 6 or something percent that is within the floodplain itself, but also goes on to note that the soil characteristics surrounding that floodplain basically would cause there to have to be extensive mitigation efforts associated with the development of the property. But overall, there's not a threshold that you have to necessarily meet. There's not a great definition of chronic flooding in the TIF Act itself. So that's why the study, I think, was written with that definition in mind, of trying to address basically what we have the ability to decipher as what the intent of the act is. But again, like you said, it's not something where the entire property is within the floodplain or that, standing water year-round, anything to that extent. So basically the thought would be that there's likely going to be extensive costs associated with stormwater management should the property develop, and So you have a connection of there are issues which cause the development to incur additional costs, and then ultimately, if tax increment financing were to be adopted, those that economic development tool would be used in hopes of remediating those conditions. But again, there's not a threshold or even a benchmark to shoot for as far as what you would need to have a project area, whether it be the amount of floodplain or the extent of the chronic flooding to really satisfy any sort of definition of the act. We can only really work with what that paragraph that I read says. Okay, thank you.
Amy, anything? Any other trustees have any questions for Jared?
No.
Okay. Jared, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Airport report, we have no airport report this evening. Next, we have public comment on items scheduled for action. So I'm going to read through the list of items that are up for action this evening. Under consent agenda, we have A, approval of the minutes of the October 17, 2022 special village board meeting. We have B, approval of the minutes of the November 1st, 2022 village board meeting. C, approval of the vouchers. D, approval of the treasurer's report. Also under general business, we have A, an ordinance amending the village code title 11, zoning regulations, commercial district fence regulations. And B, a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement for the purchase of body-worn cameras, professional redacting software, and equipment, Axon Enterprises, Inc. If there's any public comments on any of those particular items scheduled for action, you have the floor and you have 3 minutes. Anybody wants to make any public comment at this time? Okay. Going once, going twice. Thank you 3 times. We will close public comment on items scheduled for action. Are there any board members that would like to remove any items from consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as previously stated?
As stated, please.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a first out of trustee Shomas and a second out of trustee Heron. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Heron, trustee Shomas,
Aye.
trustee Heron,
Aye.
trustee Body,
Aye.
trustee White,
Aye.
sorry, I'm trying to put that. Trustee Lundy, trustee Lundy, trustee Walter,
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries. Under general business, we have an ordinance amending village code title 11. Walter.
All right, the proposed amendment is, I would characterize it as a little bit of housekeeping. The village board approved the zoning amendment back in October for a specific geographic area in the village. And since then, it's come to staff's attention that we were not as, I guess, specific in our requirements for fences that are used for outdoor storage. And so the proposed amendment does that. It specifies that the fence needs to be black vinyl coated chain link, and the wire gauge has to be 9, and that the screening is accomplished by privacy slats, not a mesh fabric. So that's. You're not expecting me to repeat all of it, are you?
Pass that the rest.
So the amendment before you fixes those shortcomings. One thing I want to point out is
he's on.
How about now? Can you hear it now?
Walter, get closer.
hello, testing.
Just give us a thumbs up, Heidi, if you can hear Walter. Okay.
Okay.
I guess you have to say it all over again.
So the amendment fixes those shortcomings. One thing I want to mention is when staff brought the amendment to the Plan Commission, Plan Commission, they were not supportive of the proposed amendment. They felt that it should be all or nothing, and that having a small geographic area defined in the zoning ordinance for this purpose, that they didn't agree with that, and subsequently they recommended changing the fence requirements to the original. Clearly that was not the intention of the village board when we made the amendment way back in October, and the staff is recommending the proposed change that's before you, which includes the specification for the material in the fence, the privacy slats, and the minimum gauge of the wire that's used in the construction of the fence.
Thank you. Any questions?
What is the status of that property, Walter?
Last week, the day before the adjudication hearing, all the parties met on the property. The village prosecutor felt that there was sufficient shortcomings in what was constructed, and offered the property owner an opportunity to cure the problem. So the matter was continued to December adjudication hearing date, at which time we'll see if he makes the corrections and repairs that the prosecutor asked for. Specifically, the nature of the repairs were, as some of you may be aware, the fence was hand painted. It wasn't the manufactured painted fence, and so the painting is very uneven, and the mesh fabric that was used, in the words of the village prosecutor, looks like a garbage bag, and directed the property owner to make it tauter so that it wasn't as loosely fitting on the fence as it is right now.
Can we take out the screening fabric altogether? I don't know how everybody else feels about it. It looks terrible. That was never the intention.
No screen?
No, just that it has to have slats and not screening fabric. So right now, obviously the ordinance has screening fabric as an acceptable use.
The new one says black screening slats.
Or screening fabric, I thought, shall be acceptable.
You're looking at the ordinance and
Exhibit A?
Look at the ordinance exhibit. You're looking at the Plan Commission report exhibit A. Page 43.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for taking that out. Did I frighten you for a second?
So this is not going to apply to that fence, though, is it?
What was your question, Jamie? I didn't hear you.
This won't apply to that fence
No.
because it's theoretically it can.
Well, I suppose if in the opinion of the village prosecutor, it doesn't comply, I guess we'll have the opportunity to apply this.
Or is the worst case scenario be a legal non-conforming use?
The worst case, yes.
And if they had to do a renovation on it, they have to replace those functions.
Right.
Okay.
Hold on, Jamie.
Nope, you're good, just,
Okay.
Real.
Yeah, so I think their special use though did have slightly different requirements written into it, so what is in their special use would be what would apply to that property.
And what properties, so the properties there that are residential is what apply to them, correct?
Correct.
There will be businesses.
Just commercial properties between Cross Street, Route 30, Main Street, and Route 47.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? No? Okay. Hearing none, it sounds like, just to direct Walter, if there's no additional questions, but is everyone okay with the way it's written and accepting it the way staff has presented it? Yes, okay.
I would make a motion to approve the amendment as noted on page 43 of our report.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a first out of trustee White and a second out of trustee Heron. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee White,
Aye.
trustee Heron,
Aye.
trustee Shodas,
Aye.
trustee Bonnie,
Aye.
trustee Lendy. Aye. Trustee Walter.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next, we have a resolution authorizing an execution of agreement for the purchase of body worn cameras. Chief.
Thank you. So, just as a reminder, the Safety Act was passed, and all police agencies have to have, their officers have to have body worn cameras. For our size agency, they need to have a body worn camera by January of 2025. However, we feel it's important to move forward a little bit quicker by the time that deadline comes up, as well as the village received a grant back in April of 2022 to assist us in purchasing the body worn camera. The staff looked at a number of the body worn cameras from different vendor exhibits and conferences attended, as well as visited with other agencies in the local area. Currently, our in-car camera system is our only supported, or it's actually unsupported at this time. It had an end of life back in 2017, so we were just replacing all the in-car cameras and currently moving over to the Exxon Enterprise platform, the fleet program, as well as we're looking to, through tonight, hoping to also supplement that with the Exxon body cams to integrate the two together. It will make the back end easier for the officers when they go to review the videos or they take it to court. It will make it, you can bring them up simultaneously one another and they'll sync. If we have two different platforms, you're going to have different screens up or take one down and depending on the courtroom environment or the civil environment, what it would look like. So transitioning to the same platform is important. We utilize North Aurora's RFP program. When we found out that all the vendors were providing every municipality a different price based on your size and how many pieces of hardware you were going to purchase. So they shared us their RFP. We went back to the vendors, renegotiated some of the pricing based on that. We couldn't take advantage of the larger agencies that were adjacent to. We just didn't qualify for the 300 plus body cams or 200 plus body cams. So we got something a little bit larger than us, but not small enough. So today in front of you, you have we had three vendors that did provide. Axon was $104,934.56 over a 5-year period. It allows the body cams to refresh after years, 2.5 years into it. So we'll get brand new pieces of equipment and as well as docking stations and other pieces of hardware. The largest component for us is the heavy lift is going to be the behind the scenes work, which is our record staff or someone else that we might have to eventually, depending on the request that we get, coming back in to redact the software. Axon's the only one that has a professional, well, they're one of the products that has a professional software where it's a few easy clicks, you can redact out license plates or pictures of people that aren't party to the incident. The other ones are still developing that professional software. They're not available. One's supposed to be available in 6 to 9 months if everything goes well. So Exxon was a little bit more pricier, but with it integrating with our in-car system, it just makes sense. We have 4 Exxon body cameras that we're currently trial testing in the squad cars right now, and we're hoping that you can support moving us forward with the Exxon body cameras for the agency.
Okay. I'm just doing my math again. If you look on the board report under cost, I know I ran this by Matt, but maybe you guys can correct me, staff can correct me. So if I'm wrong, $51,943 is the projected in the first year, but then you need to deduct the $22,000 grant. Is that correct, Brent? Remember from the staff meeting? I I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It's 51, so the first year it's saying there's 39,000 of body worn camera system and an additional 12,900 for the redaction software, which totals the 51,943. And we received the grant for 22,000, but he didn't then separate that out. So in year one, 51,943 minus 22. So the first year is $29,943, and then my understanding is then the years after that are the 13,247.
Yeah, I think the net cost, I think the way it was written this way, because we will pay them the 50,
Right.
but obviously we get 22 back.
Right.
So
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you, Chief, for giving me the nod that that is correct. So I think I would love to hear from Matt. It sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, Aurora uses this Axon software.
That is correct.
Do you have any comments on it?
We did our trial, I believe maybe 2 years ago. We trialed a few different ones. Axon was leaps and bounds better than the other two options. Had mine since I say January of this year, so going on 11 months now, and it's very user friendly for us. Redaction is a huge thing with FOIA requests, and it's easily redacted for a lot of reasons. Storage, in order to save and store on our end is very easy. It's a click of a button and a drop of a mouse, whereas in some of these other options, it's a much more complicated and time-consuming. This is probably one of the best products that are on the market, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I think when I asked Chief about this too, one of the things that Chief said was that it's going to save on staff hours for the amount of time just in the redaction alone. So it sounds like this is the best one going. The officers are using it in other municipalities.
Our current system right now, we spend about 10 hours a week running DVDs. And all this new product that Axon offers is going to be stored up on the cloud. We send a link to the state attorney's office, or open it up and tell them which case number it is, and they'll pull it. If they want to turn it to a DVD, they're welcome to, but us, it's just sharing that link, a secure link, and it will save us a lot of time, probably 5 minutes a case or 10 minutes a case versus 40 minutes a case.
That's awesome. Heidi and Ryan, either one of you online have any questions for Chief? No? Okay. Any board members here?
So as the resident, am I unmuted? Are we okay?
You're good, yeah.
As the resident tech guy, I know, in agreement with what was said, and I know the eye immediately goes to an option that's $25,000 cheaper. Be warned, anytime a software company says anything, should be available sometime in the next 6 months. No organization clearly at that state of their software development really understands what the work is going to be to get it there. I think there's value in a mature product that's already out there and established against an unknown quantity that is going to put us on the hook and still force us potentially to have probably hire some temps, before that software is done. To do the necessary redaction and that sort of stuff. And it looks like even in those other options, there have to be quite a bit of additional hardware to make everything sort of work together. The one question that I have is with respect to the cloud storage. Is that part of the Axon package, or is that something that we would have to procure separately?
They quoted us out a certain amount of storage based on the number of body cameras that we have.
Okay.
Currently, our in-car cameras through Axon do not cost us anything to store up in the cloud. So that will remain free. Just the body cameras will cost us. And storage costs in the past, when we were all jumping up and down about this, were extremely expensive. But the amount that through the cloud-based storage, it's still expensive, but not. I don't know what percent. It's come down, but it's come down drastically. And if we have to add additional, like 4 terabytes of storage, it might cost us an extra $1,000 a year. So, before that was like $10,000 to $15,000. So I think we're gonna be in good shape. It's all about the retention period to one of the smaller vendors that has the lesser price. Was suggesting that, was hoping that the agencies would only store their videos for a year. That doesn't work well in law enforcement. We have other triggers that the number, if we need to look back at cases or if someone wants to come after the village or an officer, we need to have long-term storage on that. Not necessarily 5 years or more unless it's a certain type of case, but storage obviously will be a factor in the future, but not like what we first thought about a few years back.
Okay. Yeah, because there was some thought that it would have to be housed. The cloud wasn't going to be acceptable, and we'd have to be paying price for server space and all that sort of stuff. And that was the case a couple of years ago. So I'm guessing the software meets the requirements. I'm guessing they're established. I don't know if it's by the DoD as far as security is concerned. I need to do my due diligence in making sure, because we don't want to create a situation where the viability, the accuracy, and the storage, hasn't been tampered with or modified or anything else, right? The phrase "secure" sometimes in software organizations can be varied quite a bit from one company to the next, and as long as there is a certification that it meets, the necessary standards that are put in place, then there shouldn't be any issues.
I think it's the chief has obviously done his homework on this one, and it's proven that the other agencies that are using it, especially the larger agencies that are using it, stand behind it.
How much time did you say you're spending? Did you say 10 hours a week?
10 hours a week that we're currently burning DVDs.
So off the patrolman's schedule, that's $21,320.
But this is behind the scenes. This is record staff or administrative staff.
So there would be less then?
No, it's still the same amount of hours.
Right. I'm trying to put a dollar amount to it. But it's saving a lot.
It's
It's a significant savings anyway you do it.
So significant, which would then go put a big dent in towards an annual payment on this.
Yeah. And it should be noted, it is budgeted, right? So we're budgeted for year one. And we'll have to budget for years 2 and 3 at 13,247, which seems like we'll be able to.
And that fee, I'm guessing, is just like the software maintenance cost for it, right? Or are we amortizing the cost of the hardware over the 5-year agreement that's there?
The hardware's cheap. It's actually the body-worn cameras are under like $500 a camera.
Okay.
So I think that's why you're getting a refresh on all the equipment after the 24 months, 25 months, whatever it may be. So it's just battery life. They're going to hopefully stay on at least 12 to 16 hours a day, and then it's just going to start. It's more of a disposable product at that price. If something does happen to it, getting a new one.
Any additional comments or questions? Okay. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the resolution authorizing an execution of an agreement for the purchase of body-worn cameras, professional redacting software, and equipment from Axon Enterprises?
As stated.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please. I have a first out of trustee Shomas and a second out of trustee Heron.
Trustee Shaws.
Aye.
Trustee Heron.
Aye.
Trustee White.
Aye.
Trustee Bonnie.
Aye.
Trustee Lindy.
Aye.
Trustee Walter.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Up next, we have public comment. So public comment at this time for anything whatsoever. Additionally, we have discussion items tonight of an industrial tax increment financing district, number 1, and future planning in that district. B, we have a zoning ordinance amendment, data center district. C, video gaming cafes. D, amending Title 3, Chapter 2 of our liquor control. And E, Nixle emergency notification platform. So any of those topics, as well as anything else, we have a 3-minute public comment time. So, Perry?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
May I please remind us to speak into the microphone for those at home?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Heidi, can you hear him?
Hi Heidi, how you doing? Well, this kind of brings me back to 2019. We've got Crown looking for zoning apparently and looking for TIF money. Just a couple of interesting things on CNBC this morning. They actually did a deep dig on data centers. They said the average data center is built to last about 20 years. 20 years, and they could be considered obsolete. I don't see how that squares up with 23 years of TIF money. Also, the average data center uses 300,000 gallons of water a day, which is equal to the water needs for 100,000 homes. And Sugar Grove has 3,518 homes. It's about 28.5 times the current water use that Sugar Grove is requiring. What I learned in 2019, and I would like to see this current board do, is get a little more detail on the information before you move forward on any of these items. Maybe you have it. I don't know where you're at in the process, but I do know that we didn't have much in 2019. I think you should require a thorough impact study on the environmental impact of any building that's going on, including the flood zone. I think Ryan had a great point on the percentage of what it is. It's basically a creek that overflows the boundaries a little bit. We also need to understand fully, and this is where Matt would go, he's not here, financial benefits to the village over the near term and the long term. With TIF and without TIF, they determine the true cost and benefits of the project to the community. And I'm rushing because I guess I have 3 minutes here. So we need to know that and fully understand that, what the discount rate is that would be applied to a reasonable rate of return, and provide complete transparency to the stakeholders. We didn't have any information last year, or last time. We had to dig it all up on our own. So I think if you guys, if you get into this, could put out a notice and a report, like in the water bill report that we get, what's going on and when the actual discussions may be held that are pertinent to this, what the numbers are, and determine if TIF financing is really needed for Crown to make a reasonable rate of return. If I understand TIF correctly, and I have looked into it, the TIF money benefits only the zone that the TIF district is involved with. And this is district number 3 only, correct? That's the TIF zone that would be the Crown property?
If it was developed, yes.
Okay. That is only benefiting Crown. There's no other benefit from that money. It's for the construction, the assay, the surveys, the build out, and whatever incremental financing from that tax base is only going to be for Crown's benefit. Okay?
Here, our 3 minutes is up.
All right, last thing I would like to say is that you also look at the tax base of that land. It's the cheapest tax base there is right now, is for farming. So there's going to be a huge gap in what their true benefit may be. So thank you.
No, thank you. Are there any additional public comments at this time? Julie, we're going to let Julie go first, and then so Chief will set it. When you see the timer start, Julie, you can start it.
That would be long. For anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Julie. I'm the owner of Rosewood Farm. I'm here today. I've sort of been keeping tabs on the liquor licensing process, and I fully appreciate and understand the streamlining of it. And I know, throughout our own process, you're only making it better for all the businesses coming into Sugar Grove. But as being sort of the unique business that sort of is outside the restaurant bar scene that this sort of fits into, I know you're talking about the food aspect of the liquor licensing process. I did want to suggest or maybe ask if there's areas outside of that. I know you said that there may be sort of a waiver or something with that, but then there was brought up certain fees with that and add-ons to that. And as a small business, $100 or $200 here or there, it does add up over time. It is, as a small business, I'm not only receiving an increase for my liquor license, but I'm also then adding more and more fees on, which makes my liquor license soon to be the more expensive liquor license in the area. So I'm just asking maybe take a look at it. We do a lot of food catered in. I used to work for restaurants and bars, and I fully support food being along with liquor, but there's got to be a little outside for all the unique businesses coming to the Sugar Grove area that may not be a bar or restaurant, that maybe there's a little more leeway on that.
Excellent.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Yeah, and you are correct. We're not trying to alienate or drive costs up by any stretch. We're trying to avoid the fee structures that we've had and streamline it. So we will definitely keep you in mind. Any other public comments? Yes, sir. Chief Rollins has our clock, so you can watch and monitor yourself for 3 minutes. So you have the
I'm
floor.
not used to doing this. My name is Don Adams. I'm a long-term resident of Sugar Grove, over 20 years. I'd just like to thank this gentleman over here with all the information he's given about Crown, because I thought this was a dead issue. And for this to be like swept under the carpet, in my view, is something that I hope you're going to take into consideration, that the residents, people that I know, don't want this. And I hope that you are interested in what we, the property owners in the area, think of this. So just real simple, that's all.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that.
Is there another meeting coming up here real shortly, like tomorrow at 3 o'clock?
There's a joint review board. That is a meeting tomorrow at 3:30 in regards to TIF 1 and TIF 2. Those are existing TIF districts, and we have to have an annual meeting with all taxing bodies. So at that meeting, TIF 1, for example, has Big Rock and Big Rock Township. Everyone here, Park District, Library, everyone that represents the district will have a body in the room. They're there to represent themselves and discuss the TIF, but as you will see in our agenda this evening, under item A, we are talking about the TIF district number 1, and the village board will decide whether or not they're going to declare $1 million surplus out of that to go back to all taxing bodies. So that is tomorrow's meeting, JRB meeting at 3:30. It's specific to those 2 TIF districts.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you're going to declare what?
We're hoping, if you stay tuned to item A in discussion, that the village board would like to declare $1 million surplus in TIF 1. So that's coming up. Would you like to make a public comment? No, not at this time. I just want to, before we move on, want to address one thing regarding TIF, and I know TIF regarding Crown and specifically the TIF study. So for yourself, I know you said you're a resident. There's several of us here that ran in opposition to 8 million square feet of warehouse distribution, and I can promise you that that is not something I'm eagerly or excited about seeing, and I know there's other board members that don't want to see that either. Crown does own 760 acres. Sugar Grove, so here are some facts. Sugar Grove has been standing still for quite a long time. We've grown 278 people in 10 years. We have a need for many things. We have a need for residential, we have a need for industrial, we have a need for commercial. All those things are needed so that we can provide additional revenue, not only for ourselves, but for the school district, for the fire protection district, for the library, for the park district. We're here trying to make our community better. And I can tell you that a lot of what we're asking of Crown, because we are asking, they own that land, and we want them to work with us and not Elburn, and we don't want them to work with the county. We want them to work with the village of Sugar Grove. So ultimately, we have a say in what happens there. What we're asking them to do is to modify their land use plan. They have 760 acres, and we need more homes, and we need commercial, and we do need industrial. We need a little bit of everything. So that's what we've asked them to do. And right now, there's new leadership in Crown, and there's new leadership on this board, and we're coming to a place where they are agreeing to do that. They're not coming back to us with a plan for 8 million square feet of warehouse distribution. That will not happen. Currently at Crown, they have said that plan is terrible. That's the leadership at Crown has said that to me. That was a terrible plan. So now, moving forward, yes, they're going to come back. We want them to come back. We want to embrace them. And I know TIF will always be a sticking point for residents and how it works. This board does not want to approve a TIF district that we are not surplusing money. I think that you will find that in that next item. We want everyone to thrive, and we need our village to grow. That is a fact. So I encourage you, Crown, this is their show. They want to come back to the community. They want to engage the community. They want to have open meetings. You will not, I can promise you, you will not find find out about any Crown development because a sign goes in the ground. I can guarantee you that. That's how we found out last time, and it was exhausting. Those nights, I can remember them like they were yesterday. It was a long time of not knowing, and I know that fear of not knowing. This board is not that board. This time is not that time. This plan will not be that plan. But we do need them to develop in Sugar Grove. At an interchange, at this time, we do need growth. And you will see it as we talk about the tax levy. And you will see it when the school district tries to go to referendum in the library. Everybody needs more. And this board has to control some of that and make some very difficult decisions. But I can tell you that when Crown comes back, they will come back with a plan that I think you will like. That I can guarantee. You might not like everything about it, but as a whole scale of a plan on 760 acres, I think you will agree that we've come to a good place.
You're looking mostly at me, and
I'm not. You're both
okay,
sure.
all right.
No, but I live that
no,
with you, Perry. I live that with you.
I know that, and I totally understand it, and that's why I just asked for information because of the nightmare we went through. So, hey, if you know what to expect and you know how to plan for it, and you get some indication of what the reality of the numbers are, it's easier to swallow. But that last deal was ridiculous, and it almost went through. I believe, in my own personal opinion, it would have gone through had the people not stood up and stopped. So that's the reason. I just wanted to say, hey, we need to do things differently.
Yep, and I'm glad you're here, and what I believe this time and what I've said to them is I hope that what you find in the second go-round is that you have members of the public that came to the meeting in opposition of that plan, come to the meeting and speak in favor of it. That is the goal the next time around. The other thing I want to tell you is Crown Community Development, to my knowledge, has never let a project go defunct. Okay, so that's a big bonus. The only reason they're still here and engaged with our community is because they own the land. Because any developer that went through what they went through last time would not be here, and they would not return. And I think as we've hired Michael, our economic development director, he's got some hurdles to prove to the development world that Sugar Grove is worthy. I think if Crown comes to this village and this village can approve a project that they put forward, then every other developer in the world will realize that Sugar Grove is worthy. And then you have some fun decisions to make. So, thank you for my soapbox. I appreciate it. Stay tuned. We want you engaged, and we are open, and ask us questions. There is no one on this board that doesn't respond promptly or give you their honest opinion or tell you what they know, which right now, they don't know anything. I have met with Crown because my job is to make sure that they can come back to the community and bring us a plan that we want to work with. That's it.
Well, I know more now than I did 20 minutes ago, so that's good.
Right.
Thanks for coming. Thank you for coming. Okay, up next, we're going to talk about the Industrial Tax Increment Financing District Number 1 and the future planning. Matt is not here, so Brent, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. As you can see in Matt's report, TIF1 currently has a fund balance of $1.446 million. Staff met on November 3rd to talk about potential projects in the TIF. And the board will remember that in the past, one of the things that we looked at was extending sanitary sewer out that way. As you remember, TIF1 is out Route 30 approaching Dugan Road in that area. The existing industrial users out there are on septic, which limits what they can do as well as some of the vacant property out there. We did an engineering study, and the board came to the conclusion that extending sanitary sewer at this time and for the foreseeable future doesn't make sense for two reasons: the exorbitant cost, and the second one is that it would take away capacity for other property closer in, so it would be on that same system. So the board said we were not going to pursue that. So we looked at, and you can see in the board report, four items listed that staff believes in the future may be appropriate expenses out there that could be funded in part or by TIF. One would be without having sanitary, some improvements to the septic systems out there. There are existing businesses out there today that cannot attract employees because of their restroom facilities. And there are limits on those that they have had difficulty because they can't really expand them or improve them and add more. And so we don't have anything imminent or any plans to bring to the board, but we do recognize that at some point whether that's mechanical systems, hybrid, whatever that may be, that sanitary still is an issue. Second bullet point on there is marketing, which is a pretty typical TIF expense. It's not significant, but it is an eligible expense that is often needed to get projects to go. Third bullet point, additional cell tower. In the past, and we haven't checked with anybody recently, that has been somewhat of a no man's land for cell service, that we have had complaints about the businesses out there. As you know, so many people are using cell phones for various purposes. So the idea here would be that if it turns out it's cost prohibitive for a carrier to put their own cell tower up there, that, and again, this is the potential, these are all ideas, that TIF may be appropriate to build the tower structure, and then the cell providers would have to lease space on it, but it's the upfront cost. And then the other one on there is possible acquisition and demolition costs. There are facilities out there currently and buildings that really don't serve the current business interest, if you will, and that at some point in the future, there's buildings that have been vacant on and off for a period of time, and like I say, they're just not built for the future, if you will. So that is always a possibility. That said, while we believe those are all potential projects that one or more may happen in the future, we don't see any of those being imminent. So staff is recommending that the board surplus $1 million currently out of the existing TIF funds. Matt did include a estimate, if you will, of what the breakdown would be to the other taxing districts. As he put in his report, that was based on tax year 2021 tax rates. So these numbers would change slightly if you do declare a surplus based on the more recent tax rates. But we're not aware of any significant changes, so the various estimates should be reasonably accurate. If the board entertains this, it's on for discussion tonight, not for action. So if the board directs us to move forward, we would put it on the next meeting for board approval.
Thank you, Ryan. Just quick comments, obviously. Thank you. I know staff met to go through this and see if there's any viable projects, and you came back with a list. I know that just for the public record, obviously, this money and when this was created was really for sanitary sewer purposes, but after our sanitary sewer study, we realized that the cost is exorbitant for that, and also it does eat up capacity for other vacant land within the village that we're hoping will develop. So with that being said, there's no sense when us having this money sitting here when it should be released back to the other taxing bodies. So hopefully the board is agreeable to $1 million surplus out of TIF 1, and we can direct staff to get it ready for a resolution at our next meeting. Anyone?
The only thing that I have is we don't have any line of sight on any other developers or any new business looking to come out on any of the vacant parcels out there that might be looking for some assistance theoretically with these funds. I'm guessing that, I would rather have had the opportunity that this money went into building some sort of infrastructure to support business growth out there. It's clear that's not on the radar right now, in all honesty, unless someone can advise me otherwise. Is that correct?
And the other thing I'll give before I turn it over to Michael, there is 1.446 in here. It's producing roughly 400,000 an increment a year. So next year, this time, there should be roughly a little over 800,000. So either we'll be doing two things. We'll be deferring to Michael and saying, are you attracting any business that we can utilize funds for? Or two, we'll be having this discussion again and declaring a surplus. So Michael, if you could answer his question.
Sure. All of the inquiries that I've received related to the property around the airport is under TIF 2s.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry. Is this better?
Yes, I
okay, great. All the inquiries that I've received deal with properties that are part of TIF 2. I have not received any inquiries regarding TIF 1. It's probably not the area that's going to realize a lot of business growth because so much of it is existing business that's there. Even the motel site, which I do consider to be a redeveloped site, it got moved into TIF 2. So when I took a look, the village, Brent, the mayor asked me to take a look at what the potential was in TIF 1. Yes, there are some infrastructure improvements that could be made. Maybe there's some assistance to existing business. But most of those companies out there they're old line companies that are not looking to invest money, frankly, in expanding the property. If we were talking about declaring a surplus in TIF 2, the funds aren't there to do that. But then I would say that would be a mistake. I think that money, frankly, is just going to sit there. The redevelopment sites or development sites are in TIF 2.
Got it. Okay. Which I think to echo your comments, I believe in making an argument to add a third TIF, we need to make sure we go to the community with a clear explanation of here's why the TIF is necessary, here's the vision of what the property is going to be used for, right? And I think the whole fact that we're having this discussion is because that probably never happened 10 years ago. It was a potential lure to do something out there, and here we are. You know,
and one thing to keep in mind too is if we find ourselves doing this over the next couple of years, there's consideration for sunsetting the TIF as well, and saying there's no need, and then we're not having this holding up every year of funds.
Yeah, and we're adding overhead onto the village and managing something that we're not going to do anything with.
So, but right now we're going to hopefully declare this large surplus. We'll reevaluate next year and see where we stand. But
I hope the school districts and the park districts and the forest preserve districts use it well.
yeah, well, listen, the village makes out shoe in here. We get some revenue out of this as well. So, do I have consensus on the board to declare the surplus?
Yeah.
Heidi, Ryan.
Oh,
I didn't hear him.
Unmute them.
It came on well.
I'm sorry,
I'm
Ryan.
talk again.
I said yes.
Thank you. Jamie?
Yes.
Michael?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. If staff could draft the resolution and we will declare that surplus. Just for the record, it should be voted on next meeting, and then check will be cut in the second meeting in December. The county should receive the $1 million back early January, and then hopefully after that, however quick the county gets through it, the taxing bodies will receive their funds. Up next, zoning ordinance amendment for the data center district. Walter.
The Planning Commission held a public hearing concerning the proposed zoning district amendment. The amendment is essentially what the village board saw at its meeting back in September. The Planning Commission generally accepted the changes that the village board is requesting in the district regulations. The Planning Commission discussed probably at great length a couple things. One was the landscaping requirements. They felt that what was proposed was in conflict with the security needs of a data center. And they also took issue, and I don't have it in the board report, but they also took issue with the prohibition of electrified fences and other materials used in fences, again, for security reasons. And the staff position on both of those is, with respect to landscaping, a competent landscape architect can identify ways to make it look good and provide security. And with respect to the electrified fences and spikes and razor wire, the staff is of the opinion that if a data center needs security, they can figure out how to do it without providing those type of features in the fence. So the draft that's before you does not include those discussion points from the Planning Commission. We also discussed the building height, which was a material departure from what was previously presented to the Planning Commission, and they had no issue with it. They felt 65 feet was fine. questions to the draft, we'll prepare an ordinance for you to adopt at the next meeting to approve the amendment.
Thank you, Walter. Jamie?
So, I talked to Walter a little bit about this just before the meeting. One of the things that was my concern was if we are going to go up in height, I wanted to see a greater setback so that the bulk didn't appear as...
Heidi's raising her hand. If you don't see the green square lit up on Allison's name, the microphone is not picking you up, I believe.
Yes. Okay. Still not one.
Talk closer.
Hello. There we go. Anyway, I talked to Walter beforehand, but
It's still not there.
I think these mics are
There you
timed
go.
out if they can get a signal.
No, they work if you're talking really close, we can see it through them. Now you're off, you are off now.
I'll just shut it down.
Thanks, Michael.
how about that?
Now you're talking.
Okay. Thanks, Heidi. Anyway, so I did talk to Walter ahead of the meeting. My concern was that the bulk of the building would, I wanted to see a bigger setback based on the size of it. So and they did add this under 11-10B-5, which is on page 62 of our board report, subsection E. And just for clarification purposes, they've added this requirement that there be an additional 1 foot in setback for each foot of building height. And I just want to make sure that we indicate there that the minimum yard is that additional foot in addition to the minimum yard. So in the third line there, after the words shall be, I would like us to add the minimum yard plus. So that would read, shall be the minimum yard plus an additional 1 foot for each foot of building height. Just to make it clear.
So the sentence will read, the minimum yard requirement in the DC district shall be
The minimum yard
the minimum
plus
yard plus an additional 1 foot for each foot of building height.
And Walter indicated that was the intent
Got it?
of the section as well. So,
Okay. Anything else, Jamie, that came out?
no.
Any other board members, anything else that you noticed?
I just have a general comment.
Yes, please.
I asked this at the previous meeting where we asked it before. Michael, I know the intent of this is to make your life easier. Ultimately, right, to have established rules of engagement when we're working with potential partners. Do you see anything that's excessively limiting here?
Well, thank you. I'm sorry. Is that better? I think this is a terrific ordinance. I've spent the past 3 months engaging data center developers and the leading site consultants that do data center deals in the Chicago area. And this will streamline the process. This will make it easier. It doesn't solve all the hurdles of infrastructure and other things, but yes, this is a plus. I think I'm going to use this in our marketing piece. When I talk to a data center developer, I'm going to use this. The one suggestion I had requested, which I'm glad was put in, was a 65-foot height. I don't think, in reality, we're probably ever going to need it because we have the land. The reason that data centers go to 2 stories is they got a very cramped space. They don't have a big size site. We don't have that problem. I'd be very surprised if we ever actually had a 2-story, but we ought to have it there just in case. The demand out there for data center sites is like nothing I've seen, not just here, but all over the country. They are running out of room. They're running out of real estate. And we do have an opportunity to land some data center projects. The reason they're in such high demand is that they can be low intense uses for the community. They'll produce employment. They're usually very well designed buildings, and because the industry has two headwinds that it's facing now, it is adjusted the way it does business. The first headwind is they don't have sites, and so they can't be that picky about what kind of facility they're going to build. And the second headwind is environmentally, this industry has been catching a lot of flack all over the country for the way they use water. So I will tell you that if we want me to tell data center developers we only want air-cooled buildings, we don't want water-cooled buildings, that will be fine. And so we won't have that problem of that excessive use of water. We've got something they desperately need, which is land, and I think this will help. And I want to commend the team that helped put it together, led by Allison and Danny. This is a great step forward.
We've got land and we've got close access point proximities to the major sort of routes of data that people don't see that are running into the ground.
It's the ComEd substation in Walla Walla. I will say this, we still have a long way to go. We don't have infrastructure on the north side of 88, but this could really be a real boom for the community, and this will help.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Heidi or Ryan?
I had a quick question. Is 65 feet, is this the tallest use that we have, that we permit?
That's a Walter question.
Yes, yes.
Besides this, what is our next, what height for the highest that we have?
Don't hold me to this, but in the industrial district, 35 or 40 feet is the maximum height.
Okay, I'm just a little concerned because it's such a huge difference from what we allow anywhere else.
I think it's gonna matter where the zoning is applied, right? That's a huge concern, so putting a 65-foot data center on Galena Boulevard, you know, that's not appropriate, right? So
Right. But if you put it on its back, if you put it in the right location, it's not an issue.
Right.
My only concern is, you know, with that 65 foot, where are you going to put it? Because that is such a significant difference from what they want now.
Well, I think we can direct staff to say specifically, I mean, we're working on the comp plan, but where this zoning district really gets applied, right?
Well, it's allowed in the M1 of the island, so wherever that's going to be. So theoretically, they could put it on Heartland, but with and that was the reason, Heidi, that I wanted to do the bulk setback change. You couldn't fit it at a regular size lot.
Right. That's a
Can
good point.
I make a comment? It's the proximity to that ComEd substation that really makes the difference. I've had no inquiries or no interest from data center developers to be out near the airport. They're not going to go there. They need to be as close as they can possibly be to that substation. That is what's going to attract them there. It's even more important than having it off the interstate. And the only reason, and it's a great question, Trustee Lenny, the only reason data center developers go to second stories, and because they don't want to do that, that is a bigger increase in their cost. It's because they think we don't have the land, they have access to larger sites. I would be I've had these developers tell me, you're not going to have two-story buildings in Sugar Grove. You should have the ability in case you get a deal at some point that requires it, but so I don't think we're going to have that issue. I can't promise it. I don't think so, and we're not going to get data centers near the airport. It's too far away from the substation. I hope that helps.
Heidi, any other concerns?
good question.
Are you comfortable moving forward with that 65 feet in there, knowing what Michael has said about it, location-wise?
I like Jamie's, make sure that we have that, based off the height, you do the additional foot back. I like that solution.
Walter, could you find out how tall the Facebook buildings are?
I don't think they're two-story.
I can't.
I don't think they're that big.
I'm almost positive it's one story.
They do allow for them to go up to, I believe it's 75, but in their contract, but the shortest would be like 60 that they came up with, but they did allow them to go quite high.
Thank you.
All right, seems like, unless there's any other discussion on this, are we comfortable with it enough so that staff can prepare any adjustments that need to be made to the language and have the ordinance ready for next board meeting? Yeah?
I'm good.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Video gaming cafes. Brent.
So the board recently brought this up, the question of video gaming cafes, and so staff has put together the report in front of you. Thank you to Allison for leading this effort. Essentially, I guess we've been talking about it so long, I don't know if there's any surprises in the report, but essentially what you have is where the video gaming cafes do require a liquor license, so even if the board, it's not necessarily that you have to create any new zoning or anything, but basically we have told interested parties, and we do continue to get them on a regular basis. I don't know if it's monthly, but if not, I'm close to it, where people contact us asking if they could do a video gaming cafe in the village. And we tell them at this time the board has said no to video gaming cafes, but what it would be is if you were going to allow them, it would be the issuance of the liquor license is what would dictate it. But essentially what you have here is talk about the revenue split, the revenues that you typically see in Illinois on video gaming cafes, how those dollars are split between the proprietor, the municipality, the state, the gaming company itself. There's a paragraph on police experience, which simply is that there's virtually no problems. Early on, I believe there was a handful of attempted robberies overnight to get into them, but contacting municipalities in the suburbs, nobody has any issues with these. Quite frankly, most people have no idea they even exist in their communities. Probably I don't think it's mentioned in here, but anecdotally, probably the quote issue you have is some towns allow flashing neon signs of various types, or some people may find the feather signs objectionable. But other than that, for the most part, they're very quiet. Nobody really knows they're there. The one item that I know has been a concern in the past is proliferation of video gaming cafes. And what you can see in the information that was provided, and I think the board also received some additional information on some neighboring communities, that it's surprising, I guess, well, surprising to some, maybe not to others, that it appears that we wouldn't even be anywhere close to a saturation point if you base it on what you see in other communities and the number of facilities that they have. So really, we brought this back before the board at a request with a little bit of update on the information, and ultimately, whether it be tonight or another night, we'd just be looking for essentially, I think it says a clear consensus from the board on when we do get these inquiries, because we will continue to get them, what should staff say to them. So there's really no formal action required. Tonight, it would be in the future, if you were going to allow them, it would be a formal action through a liquor license. But right now, we're just looking to know if your direction has changed at all.
Okay, thank you. Any trustees want to comment first? Okay, well, I'll share my comments. I don't know if you were, Jamie, were you here at the last meeting when we discussed this? Okay, so we did have some discussion. I think it was our last meeting. And one of the things that, I have to tell you, I'm not opposed to it as a use. So in general, I just want to say that. But one of the things that came out of the last discussion was the amount of vacancy that we have here at the village. So Michael is working with the property owner for lot 17 to fill some vacancy there. It would be my preference that we fill that vacancy with a non-controversial user, if you will. And I say that because you have Burnt Barrel Social, you have Fireside, and we did do a pour license for Casey's. So that Casey's obviously is a little bit of a far cry out. But with that being said, we're going to have additional revenue out of those two as we add users inside restaurants. It would just be my preference that the village board stay open to it as a use, and that if there is a project, whether it be on Prairie Commons property or somewhere else where we're seeing more development happen, that the village board stay open to it. I do believe that the time that I was really for it, that we didn't have a Michael. It was like low-hanging fruit, and if we knew we could generate some revenue, let's do that. And I think in light of where we are as a village today and the staff that we've hired to try to bring different opportunities to Sugar Grove, that I would prefer to do that first. So that's my 2 cents. I'm not sure where everybody else falls. Anyone?
I agree. I don't think we need to be creating a use in a place where it might not be appropriate, just so that a landlord can fill that use.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as I said before, I was pretty adamant, with a big old strong negative, for all the reasons that we were talking about. Let's keep it out there. We're not making a decision on it tonight, but if it comes to a point where someone wants to build on to one of our existing structures, and it has to have it, so be it. I'm going to share a little story, and I mentioned this briefly, provide a little more detail and color around it now that we've got a full board at this point in time. My sister up in Round Lake Beach lives in a subdivision not very different in general demographics to the one that Sean and I live in. Right on the outskirts of that, literally bordering much where the Beta Drive property would be off of Hankus in Norris today, is a small strip mall. And I'm not sharing the story to be an alarmist or anything like that, right? So there's, what used to be a White Hen in there, and now it's something else, not even a 7-Eleven. There's a, Rosati's Pizza in there. Those types of places. I think there's even an ice cream shop in there. There is a video game cafe that's there, and every time I drive by the darn place, it looks run down, it looks haggard. It's like clearly that person has done the bare minimum to just put some kiosks in there underneath some fluorescent lights, no neon out in the front on their linoleum floor, and it just looks like crap. So I would suggest, if we do decide to move forward with something like this, we limit it to where it should be in the village. I don't think we would want something like that necessarily to be around the school, per se. But I think we would try to maintain some standards to make sure that it's kept up and it looks nice. It's something that we can say, okay, yeah, we got one in here, but look at it, it's nicer than the one that's a couple of them that are up the road in Elbert or Yorkville or whatever the case may be. So that's it.
Thank you.
You say not close to the school. How far are you thinking? Because are we talking about maybe some restaurants that are near the school? One?
Oh, we have one that's not far from the school which is
but to me, a dedicated place that does nothing than that, I think sends a different message to the local.
I'm looking at Allison to make sure I'm right. They have to have a liquor license, and I believe the liquor regulations limit, I don't know what the distance is, but some distance away from schools, whether you or Allison or Chief.
It can't be far.
No, I mean, right.
We don't have to look, we don't know off the top of our head.
Yeah, I think you can't have it on school property, because we do record well next door.
That's true. Trustee Bonnie?
Hi.
Hi.
I agree pretty much with everybody's assessment of this. I think we should keep our eyes and ears open for this type of business in town. I think that it's a great revenue source for us, and as we sit here and talk about the progress of the village and what we want to do with the village, every dollar counts, right? So I think we should keep it in mind. I do agree, though, that we should find other things for the current vacancies that would better suit the village of Sugar Grove. However, if somebody wants to come in and build a standalone or another strip mall goes in, this is part of it, there's more vacancies, I think we really should revisit this and think about it a little bit harder. But the revenues don't lie. I mean, look what we have now. We do have some additional machines coming in. We talked last time about why people choose to go to these types of places other than the places that currently have them as well. So they are able to go to the gas stations or to the restaurants. Some people just don't feel comfortable going there. They'd rather go to these gaming cafes. And, who knows, maybe one comes in town, nobody really wants to go to a gaming cafe, right? It doesn't last long. Or maybe it's busy. But once again, we can control that with the liquor licensing and control how many come into town. So I like the idea of it. I think we should keep it open, but I'd rather see some better suited items for the village in those vacancies now. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Heron, any comments?
I would say the same and very similar comments to what everyone else has said. I think in my mind, an appropriate situation is somebody building a strip mall or something.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I can't get much closer.
It's showing you're on, but it's not.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
All right, now it's on. All right. Okay, I would say I agree with a lot of the comments. And in my mind, an appropriate situation is somebody building a strip mall. They've got 5 units. They've got 3 end users, and they're filling the other end users. But as it goes up, because as part of that strip mall, it's not a standalone former White Hen that is susceptible to being bare minimum put into it. There would be some sort of an association for the business center that would keep up the maintenance of the front of it, or it would be in violation of a lease or fine or something like that. But I would be open to it, same thing, because of what we don't really have right now is space. It's not a priority for me at this point.
Okay. Heidi or Ryan? I don't know if she heard me if my mic is on.
I concur with what Jen said and everybody else. I don't have anything to add.
Thank you.
I sound horrible when it hurts to speak.
Oh.
You sound fantastic.
For a horse.
Heidi, do you have any comments?
I echo the same sentiment that everyone else seems to have, that I would be great. I don't have anything that I'm really opposed to for, I'm not opposed to it. I'd love to see maybe something else, but, I comes in on a strip mall or something and they want to put one in, then that's probably fine.
Okay, thank you. So what I heard, and hopefully the rest of staff heard, was the village board is open to, this is a use in the village, that specifically when it comes to lot 17 and there's 2 vacancies in there, that we would prioritize another use over a gaming cafe in that specific location. If another development is built, if there's another strip mall built either on Prairie Grove Commons or somewhere else in the village, or a user comes and wants to put a standalone facility up, please bring it back to the village board, because it does sound as if everybody is agreeable to considering the use elsewhere. Okay? Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Up next, amending Title III, Chapter 2, Liquor Control. Allison. I'm going right to her.
The last time we discussed this in, I guess it was September, there was a request for food provision. We did some research of surrounding communities and found out that there's generally two options. One is a percentage of sales, overall sales, and then one is having a menu requirement. You also discussed if you do approve a food service requirement, that you wanted to have a waiver that you could also allow people to opt out, that you could choose for them to opt out if they requested it. So the proposed language that we have gives you two options, and I do want to say that in option A, I apologize, there are a couple of 50%ers still in there. We had gone with 15%, and those should all read 15%. I apologize. But it's a percentage of sales. It should be 15% of the gross revenue from food. The reason we went with 15% is restaurants are an easy one, but things like the Legion, things like Julie's Rose, we don't know that I don't know exactly what percentage we count them all, so we put it at 15 to see what we caught. But the other option is just a requirement that they have a food service, and they provide us with a menu each year when they renew their license. And then we did create a food service waiver as a overlay permit classification that they could request it. It could be approved by the board, and we like the BYOB waiver permit classification. It was a $100 fee for that.
Thank you, Allison. Julie, to answer your earlier questions, the intention of the food requirement is so that the village doesn't have straight bars. That was the intention. So I don't believe the intention is to now have your business have an additional charge to have the food waiver. That I don't believe is the intention. But you do have catering.
We do, yeah. It just doesn't specify because our sales aren't catering, so we don't have any food sales.
So we want to make sure that we don't, obviously we're not trying to isolate her with an additional fee, so we want to make sure she's looped into this somehow.
Option B says just and or serve food. So if she's serving food, if it's catered, doesn't actually have to be sales.
Yeah, so then you just waive your percentages.
But I'd rather see us move something into A.
Yes.
I like A better, quite frankly. And if we move something into A, saying either sales or other catering, I think Brett's smart enough to come up with something.
Yeah, the waiver at no fee. I mean, quite frankly, what I'm hearing is that the waiver would work, it's the additional fee on top of the liquor license fee. So, the waiver is totally at the discretion of the board, and we're suggesting a $100 fee, but there doesn't have to be a fee for the waiver. And certainly $100 isn't going to, it's going to have a more significant impact on a small business than it is on the village.
Yeah.
And we still would be getting the base liquor license fee. So, it might just be as easy, just if you go with the 15% waiver at no cost, but it's totally at village discretion.
I'd be okay with that.
Are you okay with that?
It's not going to break us.
No.
But
again, that goes in front of the board for approval on every particular user that is applying for that. Go ahead, Ed, I'm sorry.
I'm just looking at option A. We're going through the 15% of its gross revenue on an annual basis for food sales. Just seems like a little bit more work to have to actually go through that to verify that it's 15% of its gross sales. If I'm reading it correctly, whereas option B is just submitting that menu along with the license. I feel like it's a little bit more streamlined and easier on the village in the long run to take option B than going through the percentages of what their actual food sale is.
So are you going to, we're going to review everybody's menu and then determine whether or not it's sufficient?
Well, it's pretty simple. They're required to have a menu and they're required to sell food. We're not putting in there what food they have to sell or what food they have to give. It's as long as it's a menu. It should probably be a little bit a little bit better written compared to, are we going to allow just popcorn, or are we allowing
That's what I
frozen
mean.
pizza, right? But when you're getting into the actual work of the 15% and having to figure out, and so I know in the past when I've done liquor licensing, it's been a lot easier when it's simpler, and that's what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to make things simpler with this new program. So my vote is on option B or something similar, maybe just because it's easier for everybody to know if somebody's not in violation of it. This is just simple. When they apply, they have to provide that menu. If they don't provide the food, that's a violation of the liquor license. And same with option A, if they're not at 15%, it's a violation of liquor license. So the violation is the same either way.
So I'm going to provide plain potato chips and barbecue potato chips on my menu. That's all.
Correct. So we should probably make it a little bit better with B. Figure out. I agree, but I'm saying 15% and having to go through sales to make sure that they qualify. That's my concern, is making A primary, just because of that, having to actually figure it out. Whereas B, when they come in, they provide that menu, they provide whatever food we've said, whether it's frozen food, whether it's made on site food, whether it's catered food. I think some places all it says is food, so all they have to do is have a frozen pizza, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, whatever it is, and their constitute says not being in violation. So it's going to be up to us as a board to decide what parameters we want to set for that. But I'm just trying to get away from having to create additional work for somebody here trying to figure out if 15% of their gross revenue is actually based off of the sales of food every year.
From what I understand, the restaurants can just report it to you. That this is what our total sales were, this is what our food sales were, it's this percentage, and it's just a matter of looking at it and seeing if they're in compliance or not.
So same as the menu.
No, because the menu we've got to, like you say, come up with what's going to be what's an appropriate menu.
But could it be 15% of potato chip sales? Would that count? Right?
If
So
you
I
have
mean,
different
we sell the
flavors.
same food. It's just that we're going over the 15%. The way I'm reading it.
So the point though is to not have just a straight bar.
Correct.
Right? And if you have a requirement that they have a menu, then you're going to have a $35 pizza on our menu, and nobody's going to buy it. This is something that is going to require actual food sales unless they get the waiver. And so I think that's the distinguishing factor. And I don't think it's going to be an enforcement issue. I don't think it's going to be, Brent and I had a conversation about it early on. That was the issue that came up, was how do we do this? And we kind of talked through it, and I'm going to have a menu that I intend on not selling any of it, because I just want to buy it. And I'll have 3 pizzas in my refrigerator, a cheese, a sausage, and a pepperoni, and they're $50 each.
What would we
That's a valid point.
What would we expect the restaurants to do to substantiate the 15%?
If I can, we did talk about that, and you'll see in there that there are specific financial statements listed, but at the end, or any other form of information deemed acceptable by the liquor commissioner or his or designee. And speaking with other communities, my understanding and practice is they require basically a letter annually, and if they have any reason to believe the letter is not accurate, then they can say that is not acceptable. We need to see some real information, financial information to back that up. I think, especially at the 15% level, I feel confident that we'll have a pretty good idea if a place is really not selling food, and if they come in and present the letter to say, wait a minute, we need something more to back that up. So that's how I envision we would implement, proof, if you will, self-certification, but the ability for the village to require, proof, if you will. But initially, I think a letter is what we would ask for.
I need to comment.
Yes.
I think Brent's exactly right. I mean, the communities, I think, that do this, no one's going to put their liquor license at risk by not fulfilling the requirement. letter, which is hopefully an accurate letter, and then you'll know, like, word will get around town that this particular place isn't really selling food. I mean, they're not going to want to put their liquor license on the list. The other things I do like the waiver, because there are going to be some individual businesses that do not sell food that we're going to want in town. At Town Center, I'd love to get a wine bar there and a craft brewery, and they typically don't sell food. There'll be food trucks there.
They're gonna sell cheese.
Yes, right. May not be 15% of their sales, however. And there may be individual businesses, you know, like Rosewood. Sorry. There may be some other unique businesses like Rosewood or others that, you know, may want. I think not having that $100 fee if you're doing a waiver, I think it's a win-win. We're going to end up with businesses that will sell some food, but mostly it's going to be alcohol, and that's okay. 15% is fine. But it does give you the option of, like, if we get a wine bar or a craft brewery, I mean, those are great additions to a community. They typically don't sell food. So, but I think Brent's right. I think it's that you'll know if there's some food or not. That annual letter is a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Matt, reconsidering? I tend to agree. I like the 15% in there. I think it's more of a deterrent, right, to not break the rule. We really want to avoid straight bars. I mean, that's the goal.
My question, I guess, is to if somebody serves, is they're keeping track, and after 15% is served, do they have the right to quit serving food then for the remainder of the year if they've already reached that 15% gross sales? I mean, they're going to be selling more booze, so their gross sales will go up. So
Right, so I
they're
guess
required
they-
to sell some more food, but I mean, I suppose they could, if it's say towards the end of the year and they've reached their capacity and they have wiggle room, then they wouldn't need to sell food. If they reach
But
that.
what business is going to be like, yeah, we're open and we have food, and oh, by the way, I come in November or whatever, and they're like, we stopped selling food until the end of the year.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Discussions, raise down, raise concerns.
I like the creative thinking of every way that this could be skirted, but.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I'm okay with switching to option A. I mean, Jamie brought up some valid points and good discussion. So yeah, I'm good with switching. I do want to make sure that waiver is available though for those businesses that need it.
Thank you.
It looks like Trustee Lindy is.
Yeah, I want to hear that too, but let me just go to Laura for a second, Heidi, and then we'll come right back.
Yeah, I just did want to state, I have another community I work with that has very similar language in their liquor ordinance, and to my knowledge, I have not had any problems. They have a higher threshold of food, it's a different type of license, though. To my knowledge, they have not had any problems with, tracking that or maintaining, the administration of it has not been problematic. One thing I did want to mention, however, is I think in that case, what they do is, in an instance, a community did not meet that threshold on reporting, they give them like a quarter or something to correct before they do, take any adverse action. So I would consider here, if we are implementing this 15% requirement, what is then the board's next step if that, restaurant makes a good faith effort to meet it, but for whatever, the entity, makes a good faith effort to meet it, but then doesn't, is there then a period of time the board would be willing to allow them to correct or report or closely monitor before they take any action on the liquor license?
I think that's fair.
Should we be adding some adjudication process language in there then? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I think it's something, I think it's just something to consider when it happens, or perhaps, that the board has the discretion, it's in the board's discretion whether or not to pull a liquor license. I think it's just something to consider up front, to have in mind as to what happens then if that doesn't occur.
Heidi, you have the floor.
Right here, right here.
No, I agree that I like the option A, and I like the idea of the waiver, because I know that there's painting and wine classes and stuff like that where they wouldn't be serving food. And I think if we had an issue with concern that, Bonnie said, well, they'll stop serving food once they hit that 15%. Well, then we can rectify that a little bit when they come up for their liquor license next time, because we have that option of not issuing it.
That's true too. It's an annual review. All right, so are we of the consensus that A seems like the best option, and then as far as the waiver is just a no charge waiver, but at the same time it obviously has to come in front of the board for approval?
I'm okay with no fee.
Yeah. No fee? I think we've got
No fee.
no fee. Ryan, did you want to weigh in on this one? I know it's hard to talk, so.
I'm good. Yes, good job debating
It was very good discussion. I have to say, I agree on that. Okay. So where is that? What are we doing? Amending. So you'll get that ready for us for next meeting.
I would expect it to be on consent.
Thank you. Nixel, Chief.
Mayor, can I say one quick thing before
Sure.
Julie leaves?
She's antsing to get out of here.
You gotta remember, me and Melissa came out, so did you get the email about the Aurora CTV?
I did, yeah.
So I've asked, court from the Aurora CED to start promoting, Rosewood Farm, listing it as a destination, a place where events and meetings can be held, and I think they're gonna schedule some time to come out and visit
They're
the
coming out
facility.
in early December.
Yeah, Trustee Scholas represents our community on the CVB board, and I do believe this will turn into a real destination for visitors. So congratulations.
Thank you, Michael. Chief Rollins, Nixel.
Over the past 2 years, we expanded our communication platform for the village, specifically our emergency communication platform. We wrote the fire department back in October of 2020 to partner with us financially with utilizing Nixel and sending out emergency.
She can't hear?
Can you hear us okay, Heidi? Yep, testing. Push your button. It's not on. Okay. For the past 2 years, we split the cost with the fire department. It was a trial run for them. In the last, probably about 3 months ago, the fire chief advised us that they are going to opt out of utilizing Nixel, so the sole cost would be borne by the village of Sugar Grove. So we're looking to cover the additional $2,900 for Nixel to continue on with the process staff. Met on this and still sees this as a valuable item for us to get the communication out to the community, and still would like to keep the program moving forward. And there's a couple options that are available, is to split the cost. Currently the cost, let me just step back, the costs are split between Public Works and the police department equally. It was $1,450 on an annual budget, but now that we're going to incur an additional $2,900, there's a couple options, either to split it 50-50 or to put the additional $2,900 into the Public Works Water Fund. And we're looking for just recommendations from, there's other options too, but we're looking for recommendations from the board of how you like us to proceed.
Thank you, Chief. Any comments? You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. So just to give you a little history, because this was, some of you were not on the board when we went forward with Nixel to begin with. So it's been utilized as an emergency notification service. I know that Tony brought it to our attention that Aurora maybe overuses it, and they send notifications out through Nixel, through their community, and it seems like on a lot of different things. What I liked about it originally, I don't know if you remember this, Sean, here, but one of the things that I brought up back when we talked about Nixel the first time was the fact that the school district will give you a text message notification and then will a lot of times refer you to your email. So if they have notifications for you, it's nice because you don't always check your email on a, promptly like you do your text messages. So that part was nice to be able to get information information. That was a feature that I liked that the school did. We've chosen to use it strictly for emergency notifications. With the mindset I believe staff has is that they didn't want the community to get overwhelmed with notifications that they then tend to ignore. So I don't disagree with that, but it has been, I say, maybe underutilized in some ways. Clearly, I know Chief supports it wholeheartedly. I like the fact that we can notify residents in general, but the Fire Protection District is not participating. So the fees double, but they also take with them users. So how many users come?
They had approximately 140 users spread out across the district. Now that's not a fair statement in the sense that, I'm not sure how many signed up locally within the proper village of Sugar Grove as well, based on the fire department. So,
okay.
So if anyone also can opt in. If you live in a different community, you can opt into that. You just put the zip code in, and you're gaining users each time you do that. So,
have to go back.
They just never utilized the system. It was always us pushing it out. The village would always push out the message on their behalf, or and there's typically if there was an accident or a house fire or something like that. But their desires obviously is they chose financially what is in their best interest to move away from it.
No, and I hate to implement something and then pull it back, and that's a bad precedent too. But at the same time, I think we're all aware of every cost that's going up, and so just look at this one as to how to actually get the best bang for our buck. And do we just say, okay, 12 posts a year is appropriate for 5,800, or do we want to utilize it a little bit differently? That maybe we work with Chief and say, how do we get a little bit better use out of this? I'm just curious on thoughts on the rest of the board. It is expensive, and sometimes, there's been criticism in the past that Nixle alerts don't go out, but I would say I would rather have first responders responding than sending a Nixle alert. So there's that too. Any other thoughts on the board members? Please.
How many users do we have?
So when we originally went live with it, we had over 3,000 lines automatically set up.
Yes.
So we started with about over 3,000 lines. Since that time, we've gotten over 1,500, what I'm going to call cell phones, I would assume, signed up just for the village stuff. So that was a goal within the first year. We set the goal at 1,350, and we chipped away at that to over 1,500. We will have another one. I was waiting until this discussion because usually when we have an event like we did this week with the closing of the road, I send out a thing saying, hey, we sent out a thing about the road and you didn't know about it, and our numbers will go up. So I was waiting for this discussion to see if we were going to go, but so we have 15, 35, and the dial's 4,666. So we have been adding users, and I will just add my own personal experience. When the water main broke by the water tower and the pressure died, our phones exploded. And I know that they did it, Public Works too. After the Nixle alert went out, our calls dropped. So it was, even if it cost $5,900 to stop those phone calls, it was worth it. The word got out, and it was very helpful. We have talked about, since this came up, other things we could do. The fire hydrant flushing. We got a lot of calls about the water being orange, and we are, if we still have this, we want to push that out next April, and we can do it regionally too. Also, within the mosquito abatement, when those things are going on, people will know. So there are other opportunities for us to use it that won't overwhelm people, as Tony had mentioned, but we can be a little bit more proactive with some announcements. So village staff really likes this tool, and we're supportive of it, and we can boost our use of it.
I think that's the biggest.
I think also so if it's an emergency notification system, and you pull it, how else?
You also get-
There's Facebook posts and that sort of stuff, but.
You get other emergency, I'm not suggesting that, obviously this is another discussion item, but you do get other emergency notification through your, for example, tornado, weather alerts. I mean, I'm sure you've been laying in bed and got the blaring alarm on your cell
Those
phone.
are really inconsistent.
Well, and then the other part is you don't have 100% Nixle attention. So you can say, yeah, for the 1,500 or, I think it was 4,000, but that included landlines. Does it include the 4,000 is landlines? Yeah. So maybe you are hitting more than I thought. I thought it was really 1,500 was the number.
And also, just for those who are newer to the board, the way that this kind of came about, we did back it up with some data. We did a survey, a communication survey, and this type of system was overwhelmingly supported, and people wanted to sign up. We took numbers through that survey, and when we started the Nixle, we put out an email to them saying, hey, this is ready to go, and that's how we got a significant portion of people signing up. So we did research this before we did it, and maybe there are opportunities that we're missing, but I think it's value in the community.
I'd be curious if there's another fee structure that, if you pay by usage, if we know that we're only sending out 12, there could be a year you send out 20, there's 20 emergencies. But 5,800 for the amount of emergencies that Sugar Grove has experienced, is there a pay per call?
Now we're at the lowest level, basic, and we're allowed to have some 100,000 messages can go out on an annual basis. After that, they do it on top of it. So we're well underneath the 100,000 for each of the 2 years.
Yeah.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find other government services that the users, has a direct impact on them for less than $6,000. I think there's some, I think it's a decent bang for the buck.
Okay. Any other board members? Heidi or Ryan or? No one?
I would like to see us keep it.
Okay. Anything, Trustee Heron?
Option B.
I would go with staff.
Okay.
I think it's a good thing. Right, I would like to see it used. I'd like to see it used a little bit more, but I like these type of messages that I get from the school district. I like them from the village.
Excellent. Heidi, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this one or not.
I know I do get the Nixle alerts, and I do find them useful.
Thank you. Trustee Walter?
I find them useful as well. There's been a long lapse of time there that we didn't see anything out of where we're still alive, at least for me personally. But until it woke up this week with the bridge issue, I'm keeping it.
Okay. The only thing I would ask staff is, let's look at, it sounds like the board wants to keep it, which is great going forward, but let's make sure that we can have some data as to how many times we're sending it out.
Yeah, so just for clarification purposes, I'm going to bring this up in my staff report. It came out during our meeting with the department heads, and President Cohen, Brent suggested that we incorporate adding to the police report Nixle messages that were sent out during that time frame. So you'll see that today in my staff report as well as moving forward.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you. All right. So that goes on for consent.
Option 2 on hearing consensus?
Yes. Option 1.
That was as far as where to allocate the costs.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pat.
Whichever sheriff put all.
Okay.
25%. Trustee Bonnie suggested option 2, no one
You
objects.
said B.
I say we let the finance director make the decision.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
I think part of it should come out of administration.
Whoa, whoa,
Board salaries or something? Sharing is caring.
Well, that covers it for the year. We'll leave that to you. I don't think we care.
I'm sorry, I just heard community development and economic development dropping in some.
Like I
I
said.
don't see a need to send out an emergency message to the whole community, but never.
Yeah, we're gonna leave that up to Matt, whatever you all decide is fine.
Okay, like you know what that's.
So part of the requirement,
We don't
you're
care.
gonna require a few more snow days. So,
As long as it's no more than 50-50 split.
there you go.
No more than 50-50 split.
They would have preferred option.
All right, so no more than 50-50 split. All right, here we go. So I did weigh on that. Staff reports. Brent.
I'm just still shaking my head at the public works director just sabotaging the general fund budget, which, how much of public works come out of. But anyway.
Yeah, I just retired or something.
No, the only thing, I don't have anything to add, but I just want, it's mentioned in the staff report, but I just want to state at the meeting that we have settled the patrol union contract in principle. I don't anticipate any issues. We'll be bringing that back to the board for formal vote once the attorneys draft the language. But I want to publicly thank the officers, certainly, as well as Chief Rollins and Matt. One bargaining session is all it took to get it done. Both sides, the village and the officers, basically put their mind to it to say, you know what, there's so much common ground here, and there's no reason why we can't get it done in one day. So everybody set aside the full day, which we didn't need. And not only was it done in one day, I think it was a very professional and cordial negotiation. I mean, nobody rolled over. There was definitely a lot of back and forth and caucusing and everything that happens, but to get it done in one day is really very remarkable. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge all those involved.
Well, thank you, and thank the patrol officers for their contribution to a smooth contract negotiation. And when are the sergeants up?
Same time, so we'll be negotiating with them here shortly.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Michael? I'm sorry, any other questions for Brent while we're on it? No? Hearing none? Michael?
Thank you. So tomorrow morning is the next meeting of the Economic Development Corporation Board. I'd like to thank Michelle, our chairman, for hosting the board meeting at EEI. It will be the first in-person board meeting since 2019. Brent and I, and maybe others, I'm not sure, attended the Rev Aviation open house at the airport. Very impressed. I remain convinced that there's some opportunities for development and in Sugar Grove around the airport. And the third one is, I'm pleased to report one of the items that we had on our marketing plan that I presented to you back, I think it was in September. We're making great progress on. We're going to be hosting a reception for commercial brokers and developers on November 9th, 2023. I know it's a long way away. And our good friends at Rich Harvest Farms have agreed to host the reception, and they're going to cover the costs, including all the beverages and food. And we just had that meeting with them. So there'll be plenty of times over the next 12 months to thank them. But that'll be a nice event, a chance for us to show off Sugar Grove. We're going to have it in the car museum area, and it will include a 3-minute speech from the mayor, who will be introduced by Mr. Rich. And this will be an annual event that they will host. So I want to mention that.
I know.
Better be.
I am now. The only thing I want to say to Michael regarding the EDC is, and you didn't know this, and it was an oversight on our part, but we did set precedents a while ago that we do not do Wednesday mornings after a board meeting for meetings sometimes these meetings can go long. So for future reference, when we coordinate an EDC 8 a.m. meeting, we like to do it on an off week that is not a village board meeting.
Okay, we'll move those to a Tuesday morning on a non-board meeting week. Would that be okay?
I don't know. I think Wednesday is the preferable day, correct, Michelle?
Oh.
It's just that following a board meeting, for example, let's just say that we had a meeting, you can't predict what's going to happen when, what business is coming, but our next village board meeting, from my understanding, is chock full, and we could be here for hours. And so if we're getting home at 11 o'clock at night and we're turning around and present somewhere, I prefer not to be present somewhere at 8 a.m.
Okay, so Michelle, that schedule you put out in the packet.
Why, the rest of us have to be at work next morning?
I'm up at 5:30, I just have different responsibilities, and I don't want to be, having to then get ready to leave the house and be somewhere.
So I will revise that. Maybe we'll go for the second Wednesday of the month instead of the third Wednesday. Would that be okay?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll make that.
I forgot about that.
No, that's okay.
Right? We talked about
I was
this.
going to say, you got to really look at the calendar because there are cases where the second Wednesday will be the Wednesday after a board meeting, right? If the month starts on a Wednesday.
Okay.
So you can't have a blanket rule, you just have to go through next
Okay,
year.
we won't have any board meetings. The morning after a village board meeting. Is that okay?
Perfect.
That's it. That's what we're saying.
Okay.
That'd be great.
And
I'll
Marty,
be there.
we try to keep those.
I might be the only one.
We'll try to keep those to an hour so that,
Yes.
I know you had your senior staff meetings at 9:30 on those days, so.
Yeah. Excellent. Any questions for Michael? Okay, hearing none. What, I remember it, so I didn't write it down, but Sugar Grove Center, on prospective tenants, do you have anything, or do we still work in progress?
No, nothing to report. I wish we could have successes that quick, Mayor, but they just broke record, so.
I have high expectations.
Okay. We're working on it.
Thank you, Michael.
Sure.
Okay, Walter,
I have nothing to add.
nothing to add.
No.
Any questions for Walter? There was something. Yeah, I don't know, you're not getting any update on Burnt Barrel opening, I'm sure, at this point? No. I mean, they haven't even started the outside, which I'm surprised. Okay.
I saw one of the guys at the office the other day.
Yeah,
Well, it's been a week and a half now. I said they were having some issues getting some stuff in,
okay.
Getting some what?
getting equipment and.
Oh, yeah. Subway
He
said they would, right?
I told you that,
6 months out or something?
Chances of having anything in December are slim to none.
Just so the village board knows, we have a backup plan. Thank you, Brad. Staff will be going, all of us will be going to Fireside,
Brad's house?
Brad's house. Brad is my go-to. That's why he wears a 50-50 split on Nixle, because we need to get some help. We go to Brad. Anyway, we will be having it, I believe it's December 17th, is a Friday. It was a Friday.
16.
16th, it's a Friday. 11:30 is when lunch is for everyone, I believe. So at Open Range, and we have not, Fireside, we have not finalized the menu yet, but it'll be at Fireside. We anticipated this would happen. Brad came up with the backup plan.
A menu problem again?
We'll figure that out. All right, I'm sorry. Walter, so thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Walter? Hearing none. Tony?
Nothing to add.
Okay, nothing to add. So, I mean, we're getting public notice regarding the bridge. Do you have any idea what happened specifically?
Some large vehicle hit it, basically, and damaged the beam so severe that IDOT had to make an emergency repair.
But hit it and didn't get stuck? Like hit it and kept on moving? Okay.
Correct, yeah, there's no known vehicles that we had a traffic accident versus the bridge in the last couple of years, so this is probably discovered, I would assume, during the last inspection. Someone else has something different, and that's
replacing that one whole beam, and they, weather permitting, hope to have it completely redone before Thanksgiving.
Okay. All right. Well, it's good that, kids are, at least next week, Cleveland School District is off the entire week, so hopefully you won't need buses or anything.
And they did say they're trying to keep the shutdown because when they're working on it, they can't have any traffic underneath it. So they're trying to avoid rush hour to prevent as many traffic problems. But there is a posted detour which follows Galena to Orchard to 30 because it is a truck route and they do have to have a truck approved detour. So obviously that is why it goes that way. So there are signs for the whole route.
Thank you.
And this is all handled and coordinated by IDOT.
That sounded like a commercial. Thank you. All right. Any questions for Tony? Okay. Hearing none. Matt is not here. So, anybody have any questions on Matt's report? Not that he's here to answer, but I'm sure Brent could follow up on anything? No? All right. Chief Rollins.
I'm happy to announce that Officer Juan Moreno is out on solo patrol as of this past weekend, so we hired him back March 14th, I think it was, of this year, and he went to the police academy, and after graduating the police academy, went through the approximately 4 weeks in the FTO, or 4 months, I'm sorry, in the FTO process. So he is out on his own, so that's good. And then just a status update, we did do a conditional offer that we spoke about to an officer on a lateral position. He accepted it. He passed his psychological and medical. He'll be starting with us on November 29th. We anticipate having a cake and coffee for him and his family at the next board meeting, so starting about 5 o'clock. We'll probably do the swearing in at 5:30 at the next board meeting if we can coordinate all that. So tentatively it's good. Yes.
Excellent. That's a long one, so hopefully that's what I'm hearing.
Haven't leave the coffee.
And then we're just still have one open vacancy for a police officer that we're still trying to fill.
Okay. Any questions for Chief Rollins?
So I'm sorry, just one more thing I appreciate it is we also added on our seasonal, I guess we'll call it, open burning is also on my staff report moving forward. So we did have probably about 6 open burnings this past period. 2 of them were out of compliance. We just asked them to extinguish it, which they did just because of the weather. I'm sorry, the wind condition, and then past the 3 o'clock. So, but the other ones were in compliance. I know the ground is wet, the leaves got snow on them, so if someone does burn, obviously it's going to be heavy, thick smoke as they try to burn off the moisture from the product. So we'll hopefully catch it before it gets too smoky in the neighborhoods. So we're just trying to keep you informed that on the staff report.
Yeah. Thank you. I know that it is that time of year where people are trying to clean up their lawns, and lawn bags end the end of the month, right? So we have 2 more weeks, I think, next week Thanksgiving week Monday and the week after. So lawn bag collection is still carrying on for 2 more weeks, but it's that rush of those trees that drop the late leaves and people trying to pick those up. But it does create a nuisance. I know I heard from I called Chief about it, but the children at school in recess this past week, and all the smoke that was blowing in there to recess, so the kids were outside for several hours. And so I just want to be cognizant of the fact that how many calls we get. Maybe we look at this every year and say, okay, because it comes back. There will be more residents that complain about open burning, and so let's just see how many actual complaints we get. Oh, you know what? I did have one question for Chief. Can you go into detail a little bit on you intended a presentation at St. Charles Police Department regarding desire to build training classrooms at St. Charles Range, and you have a lot of electeds there.
Yes, so St. Charles is one of our, they have an outdoor range that most communities in the area, probably 3 or 4 different towns participate in it. In addition to the body worn cameras, we also have additional mandates on our training, number of hours that we have to get done on an annual basis. It's currently all outdoors. There's no classrooms that are out there, so the desire from St. Charles Police Department was to get support of all the agencies that utilize the range to come there on that day, and they had 6 or 7 of the state reps present, and they were pushing to see if they can come up with grant funding or funding through other legislative means to help support building a classroom environment out there in the garage. So it was pretty informative, and all the local representatives and senators were present at an early morning meeting. So
That's good. Good for them. Just gets the creative juices flowing here as to how we start hosting some things in Sugar Grove, and then we can bring them to the village for.
Wouldn't have gotten about that.
Exactly. All right. Any questions for Chief? No. Hearing none. Trustee Bonnie.
I attended the open house for the full second new location. It's a nice event. I'm looking forward to the new building and the new customers that will attend.
Thank you. Trustee Aaron.
Town Center Committee met last night?
Nope.
No.
You just turned it off.
There you go. Oh, you keep pushing it. Do it again. There you go.
It worked last night. All right, here we go. Town Center Committee met last night, and keep saying this, we're real close. We're really, really close having something to present to the board. It was the stock photos, and we subscribed to iStock Photo, and we have a month's subscription. We have about 30 pictures that we do have. They've been sent over to the publisher, Roger, to put into the brochure. So we're real close. Michael added, I think we talked about what his last page would look like, a map with Sugar Grove on it for the last page, within showing a greater, actually it's Walter's map, showing Sugar Grove in relation to Chicago, airports, Indiana, and Wisconsin. But it's really, really close. We're hopefully going to have an idea of how much and when soon, and then we should have a final copy in front of the board for you guys to take a look. Really excited. I'd really like to have you guys take a look at it because it's fantastic. But hopefully soon. Our next meeting is December 19th.
Thank you. Trustee White? He's abstaining. Trustee Shomas?
The Convention Visitors Bureau is going off cycle for this meeting. They combined their November-December meeting, so I've got nothing to report yet there. We're meeting, I think it's next week, the week after Thanksgiving. So nothing to report there. Park District was able to attend for an hour and a half of their meeting yesterday. They rarely go longer than 30 minutes. The new director is he's very active. He's a snowplow man in a good way. So he's keeping stuff moving. They were talking about the financials, just like we had. They had their hearing yesterday. The Bridge IGA, which ended up, they had some questions that I'm not sure if they reached out to you yet on that, Tony. They approved it pending their own attorney's approval of it. They want to have their attorney look at it. They had some confusion because of the fact that the IGA is for the maintenance agreement, but even though the IGA for the top line agreement still isn't nailed down yet, and they were really, they had some confusion on that. And I said it was necessary in order to get engineering going and to get stuff submitted to IDOT. That may or may not have been accurate, but I thought that was the case.
Sounds good.
We're working on it. Scott did send us an email this morning, and we are working on the agreement and the IGA with the Forest Reserve District that involves all 4 government entities. So it's in Laura's hands, and she's working with the Forest Reserve District attorney to bring all these together. And Scott's email said that he was going to have their attorney take a look at it.
Renee couldn't be at both meetings last night, so that's why she wasn't at the town center meeting, because it happened to fall on the same night as you. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. She didn't say that last night.
She told her I said hi.
A long time ago.
Okay, my apologies.
No.
Yeah. The other interesting piece that they spent a lot of time talking about is there could potentially be a piece of property near the airport that might. There's some discussions going on, and I asked them, is this going into closed session? Because we usually do when we talk about land acquisition, and they said nope. It went rather long as far as the strategy goes. So, more news to come, but it's not going to happen overnight for them.
A piece of property for soccer fields?
It is big enough, potentially, that it could be anything and everything they would ever imagine. And that was really, and they said that it really, one of the conclusions that they had is that, it could theoretically give them the opportunity to do everything they ever wanted to do, good, bad, or otherwise. The question is are they ready for it yet? The financial numbers are drifting quite a bit between what the family told them and when a realtor got involved. Surprise, surprise.
He's taking shots.
But yeah, I mean, that's potentially a big piece of news. I had to leave right before they started talking about the ice rink. Like I said, that I had a hard stop at 7:30, and I never imagined that thing would go for 90 minutes last night. So it did.
It happens. Trustee Lindy?
Report this time.
All right, well, I hope you feel better.
Feel better.
Trustee Walter?
Nothing for me. Matt, you can speak. Nothing for me either. Take that out of recording.
We say caboodle hot.
Thank you. Both of you need to get some rest and drink lots of fluids. President's report. So, I attended a lot of things along with some staff, the ribbon cutting for Old Second. Surprising how they were in that very large building and now what they've consolidated to over in the new location. It's quite a bit different. So, but beautiful. I mean, modernized, I guess, versus a building that needed some updates. So that was nice. Also attended the investment committee meeting with Brent and Matt. The TIF JRB meeting, as discussed earlier, that is tomorrow at 3:30, and the EDC is tomorrow morning. Holiday in the Grove, I know Santa came in and spoke about it, but I know that there are other other communities that are doing holiday events on that Saturday. I think Elburn included is doing something. So shout out to all Sugar Grove residents and or seniors that live in the community that their grandchildren maybe live elsewhere. It should be a really nice event. Glad that the tradition is being carried forward. The other addition is the tree lighting, which the group that normally does the tree lighting is still participating, and they've moved their week. I think I shared that before, so they moved their week. They typically do it the Friday after Thanksgiving. They're doing it the Friday before the holiday in the Grove. So that should be a nice night. I encourage you all to come. The tree lighting will be lit. Public Works we're going to have to work on a countdown of sorts to time the tree, if at all possible, with the lighting of Main Street. There will be a luminary walk, so you'll have a nice walk back to the Township Building for drinks and cookies kind of thing. And I think the one other thing that we discussed at one point was potentially blocking off Sugar Lane with either police vehicle or a plow truck or something, so that there's safe passage for people on foot between the tree and walking back. So, also attended a meeting with Chief Rollins at Rich Harvest Farms regarding the Live Golf Tour, and they will be back. I believe that is set for Labor Day weekend, right? To be continued. Is that not official? I think they said that they wanted to do it around that time. Ta-da! It's coming. It's coming. And to give you an ice skating rink update, so there is a meeting this Thursday morning that is continued, and that is 4 entities working together to put that on. So that should be moving forward. I think their attorney is going to draft. I don't know if an official IGA is what is needed, but they are working on a document basically looping us all together. And then just one other thing I wanted to let the community know that Michael and I will be traveling at some point, January 23rd down to Carmel, Indiana. We are interested very much in what they're doing down there and are hopeful to meet with a housing developer that is down there, as well as the mayor of Carmel and a developer that has worked extensively on Carmel. So the goal is to hopefully bring some developers that are outside the Chicagoland area to potentially Crown's property or elsewhere within the village and do something different here. So that is to be continued. That will be happening. We'll keep you updated. That's in January. And then lastly, I hope everybody has a very nice Thanksgiving. I will be with my family, and we're gonna travel and hit some warmer weather for the week. But the kids are out of school and no bus service. But I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Got a second. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee White.
No.
Trustee Herron.
Do it.
Aye. No.
Trustee Bonnie.
Aye.
Trustee Shomes.
Aye. Aye.
Trustee Lenny.
Aye.
Trustee Walter.
Thank you. Motion carries. Good night, everyone.